All right, so I'm going to teach you a process that some kids don't love, but I promise in the long run, if you will stick with me, this will be a tool you can use in math, in science. I even had a student one time come back and tell me that she appreciated me teaching her this because she uses it in Kneaders. As the head chef, when she needs to change a recipe, she just uses the picket fence to make it bigger or smaller. So please, today we're going to learn it while the math is easy. All right, so when we get to math that's hard, this process is pretty simple. So once again, learn the process while the math is easy, so the process is easy when the math gets hard. So this process is called the picket fence. And really, it's just a way to line up proportions mathematically so you can solve complex problems. Now today the problems are really simple, and I know most of you can just do these in a calculator, but please do them my way so we can once again learn the process while the math is easy. So when the math gets hard, the process is easy. So here we go. You've probably not even paid attention to me. Here are your blanks. When solving problems that use proportions, it is necessary to make sure that all the units cancel for those units except those units in the answer. So that's one of the key things we're going to use in this picket fence. And this will make sense a lot more when we do an example. Next, the picket fence is a tool used to make sure that the units cancel. Okay, like in math, when you put like fractions, 2/4 times like 8/15, and yes, I know that's 1/2, but I don't care. You know, we just kind of multiply, cross multiply. But if we had an 8 here and a 4 here, we could reduce that to a 1 and that to a 2. All right, so we're going to take advantage of the fact that we can cancel or reduce things in a fraction when we line up these proportions. The picket fence will help us do that in the right order. All right, when a number is on top of the picket fence, so the picket fence essentially is just going to look something like this, and we'll have some numbers like 7 and 5 and 2, all right, and then 3 and 1. When a number is on the top of the picket fence, it means we multiply the other numbers by it. So we would take 7 times 5 times 2, and we would get that answer. So 7 times 5 is 35, times 2 is 70. And then the bottom, we multiply that also, 3 times 1, and that's 3. And then, when it's on the bottom, we divide other numbers by it. So we take 70 and divide it by 3, and that's like 23.333. Okay? So the numbers on top, you're always going to multiply. The numbers on bottom, multiply them together first, and then divide the top by that. Okay, next slide. So, here are 4 steps, and just go ahead and fill those notes in for a second, and then I'll talk. All right. If you need to write, still write. So with the examples we're going to do in the next few slides, we're going to follow these 4 steps, which quickly are first to write out any proportions that the problem gives you. Next, identify the units that you want to satisfy what the problem is asking for. So like if you read it and it says how many grams, then you would know I need to solve for grams. Step 3, start the picket fence in the upper left-hand corner. So for right now, we're just going to put a plus sign. We call this a picket fence, though, because eventually we're going to add more and more, kind of like a picket fence would look, if that makes any sense. All right. But for now, we're just going to start with a plus sign, and we're going to start by filling in the top left-hand corner. All right. Then, down here, we would fill in the picket fence from left to right, making sure to cancel units as you go. What we mean by that is if this is grams right here, but let's say I want to solve for liters or something like that, I would always take the unit that's here and put it right down here, and then the unit that would be here would come to the end. I would cancel out the grams, because if one's on top and one's on bottom, they will eliminate each other, and I would be left with just the units I want. That's what this is saying. So let's go ahead and work through the example right here. And I know that a lot of you can just do this math, but I also want you to learn this process. So it says you have 23 marbles which cost $1.79. This is a proportion. So step one, right here, write out any proportions in the problem. So there are 23 marbles, and they cost $1.79. That's a proportion, a relationship to two things, or of two things. Then it says, how much do 5, 6, 7 marbles cost? So that's not a proportion. So we're going to call this the loaner. Okay? The loaner, if we find the loaner, life's going to be great. And I'll tell you why in a second. So step 2, identify the units we want to solve the answer for. How much, the universal sign of how much is money, or dollar signs. Then, step 3 and 4, start the picket fence in the upper left-hand corner. I'll do that right here. I'm going to put a plus sign, and it says with the unit of and number that are not part of a proportion, or I like to call that the loaner. Okay? So we have a loaner of 567 marbles. I'm just putting MAR for short. So I always start in the top left corner with my loaner. All right? The loaner is left out. Try to remember that. It's on the top left. Okay, number 4. Fill in the picket fence from left to right, making sure to cancel the units. All right. In step number 2, we notice we're solving for money. So I'm going to put that there. And then I want you to know this. The unit at the end is always the unit at the end. So I need to cancel out marbles. In order to do that, I bring the marbles down here. And I have money on top. And I find my proportion. I have marbles and money. I just need to flip this over. For every 23 marbles, it's $1.79. All right, and then math-wise, I just take 567 and I multiply it by 1.79 and I divide by 23. And I'll pause and do the math real fast. All right, when I type that in, I got 44.127, so I'll call that $44.13. I guess I should write that right there. Wasn't really looking. All right, so that would be the total price if you wanted to buy a ridiculous amount of marbles. Okay, let's do another practice. All right, so this is on the next page, I believe. So let's do this. Katie can earn $9 for working 2 hours. So step number 1, that's my proportion. All right, $9 for every 2 hours. How much would she earn for working 5.5 hours? So this is not part of a proportion. All right, so step 1, I found that. Step 2, what units do I want? Once again, it's how much, so that's just money. And then I'm ready to go. I start in the left-hand corner, the top left, with my loaner. This is not part of a proportion. The other ones were. So I have 5.5 hours, and I want to solve for money. Please remember the unit at the end is always the unit at the end. So I come over here, and I have this proportion, and it's already the right way. I do not need to flip it upside down. I have $9 per every 2 hours. All right, I want just money, and that's convenient because the unit of hours cancels out. So I can now take 5.5 and multiply it by 9, and then I divide that answer in half. And I got $24.75 for her working 5.5 hours. Aren't we grateful that that isn't really the rate that you guys get paid anymore? Okay, one more example, and then I'll let you do the rest of them. Well, this is about Mr. Sanchez. It's number 3 on page number 10. And I only do this one because it's a little bit confusing. I'm going to start my picket fence, and it says, Mr. Sanchez paid this much tax for his lot, which was valued at $65,000. All right, this is tax per value. So this is my proportion. I have 345, and I'm going to write tax just to keep this more clear, because everything on here is a money value. So I'm going to say tax per 65,000, and I'm going to put value for that. All right, at the same rate, what is the value of Mr. Gomez's lot, who paid 468.75 tax? So this will be my loaner, and it is a tax. Now, all right, I want to solve for value. The unit at the end will become the unit at the end. All right, and then I start with my loaner, 468.75, and that's a tax. So I'll put tax here. I have value on top. I want tax on bottom, so these will cancel out. So my tax in my proportion is $345 of taxes. My value is $65,000. And then I'm ready to roll, because if we look, the unit of taxes cancels out, and I'm only left with value. So I now take 467, I keep saying that. I take this number times that number and divide it by 345. All right, I typed that in my calculator, and I got $88,315 and some change. There's some change, but who cares? Okay, will you do the rest of page number 10 on your own now? You can work with your lab partner as long as you work quietly. A couple of things you need to know. An inch is number 4. You need to know just a helpful proportion to help you out. There are 12 inches per foot. So just take your height, multiply it by 5, and then add your inches. That will help you figure that one out. Then number 5, a silk material for a dress costs $14.75 a square meter. So for number 5, some kids don't realize that's a proportion, 14.75 per 1 meter squared, or square meter. And then for number 6, you need to round. When it asks how many donuts, don't write the answer in dozens, and don't give me a decimal. Round down, because we can't have like 7/10 of the donut. All right, take a few minutes and work through those, and that should get us to the end of the hour.